So this week, I'm excited to share a quote from a student that Stefan shared with me who he's been working with. And it says, I've learned a lot about what's going on in the world. Everything connects to one another, and I like how it extensively sticks in my brain. However, at school, since we're constantly changing topics and I'm only studying for a good grade on a test, it leaves my mind pretty quickly, and none of it inherently connects to the real world. But by debating, you have to actually understand the concept and keep adding on to it. So the information I retain really stays in my mind and it influences my view on the world that I've never really had before. I think debate as a form of learning is amazing, as you have to implement so many elements like logic, writing, learning, listening, understanding. There are no negatives to taking debate. It will only help a person both academically and in the real world.
How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin? And how do you develop the mindset and skills to be successful? You're listening to Designing Schools, and I'm your host, Dr. Saba Kidwai, educator, researcher, and storyteller. Join me each week for stories and strategies that bridge the gap between research and practice, as together we explore how might we design schools.
All right, Stefan, did you pay them to write this?
I just asked my students or the debaters, and I just asked them for feedback at the end of the year. One of us talk about some things you've learned. It's just expecting the normal. Oh, I've learned about the topic. I learned to give some speeches, give a rebuttal, organize my ideas. But this debater, yeah, she's smart, like highlighting the one thing in a very relatively short quote. It says, when I study for a test, I just do it to get the grade, and then I just kind of forget everything, which I think is true. A lot of people argue that more performative activities don't have to just be debates, but where students are producing things and engaging, that they tend to remember those things longer. Whereas maybe if you cram for a test, you get a higher test grade, but it disappears. So I thought that was useful. But also, like, you're incorporating all these things at once, like logic, writing, learning, listening, understanding, all these things, right? And people that we're connected with on LinkedIn and other people do like professional development, they call it for teachers about AI. They're like, but yeah, I haven't come up with that magic trick yet. So the students can still use AI and write their paper and not quote unquote cheat. There is no magic trick. You have to have instructional redesign like that. That's what it is. And I think debate's a good example of that, because debaters, like, I show them how to use AI, the most advanced AI tools, the deep researchers, all those kind of things. But just because they use that, they don't just go win all their debates. Debate's always been a collaborative intelligence, right? You work with your coaches, you work with other people on your team, you might work with some debaters who recently graduated. It's all collaborative. So you're just adding an AI. The AI can't debate for you. Well, now we're getting into robotics, which we'll talk about later. And if it just popped up a little robot and it gave your speech, the judge would say, no, this is for humans. We got to have the humans give the speeches. So debate is an integrated performative model. And that's where I think instruction needs to occur. But we can get into that more later. But yeah, it's a really powerful 6-7 sentence quote that exemplifies where things need to head.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel there are two things you have been consistent in and both passionate about and totally correct on. And that is debate and AGI. And I think when people think about what does instruction need to look like in a world with AGI, I feel your students' comment, just even around the words they used were so specific: logic, writing, learning, listening, understanding, things about the world, making connections. These are things that are going to become so important. And one of the first news articles that we wanted to share with you this week was from tech columnist of the New York Times, Kevin Roose. And I feel I have to pause here just to say that this is not somebody who is part of the tech club, right? This is not like he doesn't have an AI company. He's a journalist who's really been documenting and talking about this. He's the host also of the Hard Fork podcast, which I know many people listen to. He's somebody who's really been talking about this from the beginning. So his conclusion is basically like, wow, I've been looking at this for the past few years. And he wrote an article last week. It's called Powerful AI is Coming. And I want to just read you a couple of pieces from his post. He says, I believe that very soon, probably in 2026 or 2027, but possibly as soon as this year, 2025, one or more AI companies will claim they've created an artificial general intelligence, or AGI. I believe that when AGI is announced, there will be debates over definitions. When he said that, it really reminded me of what I call my AGI moment, which is obviously not to say that it's here, but I will never forget that September in 2024 when Sam Altman is like, yeah, they can reason and we can get to AGI because we train these models to like spend more time thinking through a problem, learning from their mistakes and refining their strategies. And I'm like, did you just literally define design thinking for machines? As somebody who believes so much in the power of design thinking, when I hear that that's what you're starting to apply to a machine, not one single AI update is going to surprise me now, because that is exactly how we learn, how we create, and how we come up with new inventions. But he goes on to say that I believe most people and institutions are totally unprepared for the AI systems that exist today, which is exactly what you were saying, Stefan, let alone more powerful ones. And there is no realistic plan at any level of government to mitigate the risk or capture the benefits of these systems. And then he goes on to say, I arrived at this conclusion as a journalist who has spent a lot of time talking to the engineers building these powerful AI systems, the investors funding it, and the researchers studying its effects. I've come to believe that what's happening in AI right now is bigger than most people understand. Every week, I meet engineers and entrepreneurs working on AI who tell me that change, big change, world-shaking change, the kind of transformation we've never seen before, is right around the corner.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Okay, Stefan, I remember when we were doing our first workshops, you were like, we got to talk about AGI. We got to talk about AGI. And I was like, no, like people aren't even ready for like AI. How are we going to get to AGI? But no one has written about AGI, I feel, more than you when I think about the education space. If AGI was to arrive next month, what is the single biggest failure we will look at in how we've prepared for that moment?
I think the single biggest failure is we've generally done nothing or close to nothing. And I think you're right. It's definitely true in the education space. It's true in the governmental space. And to a degree, it's true in the corporate space. They're trying much harder. They're trying to go a lot faster. But the other thing, I'd kind of preface it by additional comments with a few things. And that is, I think you just said, Kevin said that, like, we haven't even prepared for the current level of AI, which is pretty sophisticated. There's a study floating around that's in some instances, AI has a higher diagnostic accuracy rate than doctors. There's already been stuff that says it's better with tumors. I've done a lot of research that clearly indicates that it's more persuasive than people. These deep research tools, I think, have impressed a lot of people in terms of their ability to write research papers. And that's just with using general sources on the internet. You could obviously take the same technology and apply it to a scholarly or specialized database and have it produce the same thing. So we haven't done anything to prepare for that level. And I commented, Ali Miller shared a post today. She's the most cited person or influential voice in AI. She's like 1.5 million followers. And she said something like, oh, when people ask me what's AI, when might it arrive? And she gave the answer. And I was, oh, great, because that's the answer I give. So then I felt like some sense of affirmation. But I also said there's three key things we need to do to get to AGI. One is that it has to have more knowledge than even the most knowledgeable people in the world in their subject fields. The second has to be able to generalize from one field to the other. And the third thing it has to do is be able to come up with its own original ideas. And obviously that definition of original is debated a little bit, but all three of those aren't going to happen at once, right? The knowledge thing, we're probably pushing the envelope and make it there first. Breakthroughs will be required on the other ones, but each of those will create their own societal impact. So we haven't really done anything. A lot of the PD that's being done and tools that people are using all assume that, or all just like using AI to teach and learn the current curriculum more easily, which I don't think is inherently bad. I mean, if people learn how to use AI, they see the power of AI. If we're going to keep the current curriculum, we might as well learn it more efficiently. And I'm certainly not saying you have to get rid of all the current curriculum, but there's maybe until recently, we talked about hardly any schools are really thinking about or starting to think about what it means to teach students in a world where the machines are smarter than them. I was listening to a podcast with Eric Schmidt, who's one of the original CEO of Google, the chairman He's like, hey, over the next 10 years, we're going to work with this. The AI is probably not going to be able to work entirely on its own. We're going to have to work with it. We're just going to have to get used to working with people constantly. I call people an entity that's smarter than us, like constantly. After that, in 10 years, it may be able to just work on its own. So he's saying, hey, that's speeding up. The other thing, there's an article, and we'll put it in the show notes. It said half the people they surveyed thought AI was already smarter than them. Which is probably true, because if you think about it, does it have more knowledge than like the best doctors? Well, most people aren't the best doctors, even if they're doctors or like an average doctor. Most people haven't, I hate to say it, but they haven't thought of like totally new ideas. I haven't really. Like, I mean, you think about Einstein, he came up with the theory of relativity, right? And we can go back and say who invented artificial intelligence. Most people, they don't have that novel in debate and argumentation. We've been teaching the same theories of argumentation since I learned it the first time, right? So there aren't that many people creating completely original ideas. Most people can generalize from one situation to another. We do that all the time, but those other things we don't do so well. So I think kids who can use AI that way and become entrepreneurs or even just use the tools, they're going to run up the score. I mean, because now we're getting to the point where my friend Anand, he never learned how to code at all. And he's been building apps for Chrome extensions that he uses for different things. He built an app for his wife to keep track of her billable hours. So it's using all those things even for what you do. You're just going to run up the score on other people aren't going to be competitive. And I think there are no easy answers, right? Like you say, whoa, what do we do? Okay, well, I don't know. We never had machines that are smarter than we are. But if we're so smart, everyone's like, wow, we can never be smarter than a human. But then we come up with this new thing of a machine being smarter than us, and we're just like radio silence, right? So if we're so smart, if you went to school for 25 years, you should be able to have a thought on what we're going to do or machines that are smarter than we are. But I would say the biggest thing is that we've hardly thought about it. And I said there's no downsides to using it for the current curriculum. There is one downside, and that is you get your mind in that direction. And all your thinking becomes about how can I use this tool to teach the current curriculum better? Okay, but then you don't really pay attention to the question of how are we going to prepare students for this from a completely new world. It was back in the days, right? They had the spinning jenny, which I guess could make the materials, right, faster than a human who sewed or whatever. It'd be back in the day. If you're going to sew faster than the spinning jenny and you're trying to teach the kids to sew as like fast as they can. But the reality is the spinning jenny can sew faster than you. So we can talk more about this later. But so then it becomes what skills do you need to work with the spinning jenny so you can have a future. You're not going to outcompete the spinning jenny as a person producing materials.
Totally. It actually reminds me, anytime somebody talks about originality of ideas, I always think back to that episode on the hidden brain. It was like a while ago, but it was with this Stanford professor, Justin Berg. And basically what he does, he actually studied creativity and originality. And he found that we don't actually really value original ideas. Novelty scares people. And his entire thing was how we tend to always opt for things that are more familiar. And that's why he says, basically since the 80s, I think he said, most music tracks have the same baseline beat. Sequels are done more than original movies because that's just the nature of what tends to draw people. So I'll link the episode because I'm probably not doing it justice, but I just think it's so interesting. We always talk about original ideas, but it's actually not what gets people success in the world.
Well, you actually have a lot of experience with this because when I first met you, it was kind of ChatGPT just came out. But before that, you had done your work with designing schools and you had the documentary and trying to get schools to change. And you're like, I have some new ideas. And people are like, well, we don't like original ideas around here. It's the same problem we're having in general, trying to get schools to think about how to teach differently in a world of AI. It's much easier to just operate within the current system. People are like, wow, that's a really cool original idea. We could change how we teach. And it just doesn't happen.
Totally. And I think a lot of that just comes down to systems and having the right process and those things in place. But what we wanted to do today was instead of going through many updates, because there have definitely been some AI updates, like Google, especially, I think with their AI image generator and just some of the new features they're bringing into deep research now, making it into audio overview, really starting to see the merging of some of their different tools come together. But what we really wanted to focus in on today was the GTC, which basically stands for GPU Technology Conference. It's NVIDIA's annual conference where they basically showcase their advancements in AI, accelerated computing, and emerging technologies. And it was just another mind-blowing keynote from Jensen Huang, who is the CEO. And we wanted to talk about just a couple of themes from this episode. Now, I know not a lot of people get to watch these keynotes. We will obviously link it in the show notes. But this one, I do really feel when he speaks, people should stop what they're doing and listen because not only is he telling you about the future, he's building the future. He is powering the future. And he is literally so clear. He's so articulate. The more anything, he's so enthusiastic. And I think that's why it's really important for us today to spend some time on this. And we wanted to talk about it in this episode is, we're talking about this. I'm at an event right now, and it's just so interesting when I sit and I listen to somebody like Jensen Huang versus some of the people that I meet in person. And it's just this idea that people have so much belief in what their machines are capable of. I would say even what's beyond the sky is not a limit for them. There is no limit in their mind to what they believe their machines can do, create, become. And when I think about how people talk about kids, and when I think about even how people talk about each other, that belief is not even 5% of what people have in machines. Like, oh no, they're never going to be able to do this. Oh, the kids are cheating. It's such a deficit, negative mindset. And it made me also think about what makes a great relationship. And one of the things that I love most about the relationships in my life is people believe in you and what you can do. When I think about my dad and my sisters, they believe in me probably more than I believe in myself. And I feel that is ultimately what makes relationships so magical and so great. You have these people who just have your back. They believe in you. They see things in you that you don't see in yourself. And I really would take this moment to say, I really feel we need to do that more for each other, whether it's personally, but more so professionally for each other, and find ways to help people reconnect with those parts of themselves. And so the reason I say that is because the first big theme from his keynote is, he said, once a year clockwork, he said, we will launch a new AI architecture. And it's this idea that AI is evolving and most institutions are not. And it's just the speed is something you really grasp when you listen to him in this keynote. But when you think about the speed of sales schools, and I know people are like, oh, in tech, they build quick things and they break things and they go fast. And yes, there's an element of that, but there's also an element of you need to get out of your PDFs and you need to get out of your discussions and the formalities of things and just start doing things. And I think also start having other people do things. This really cannot be optional anymore. We literally have these intelligence systems, and not just intelligence, like systems with agency that are accelerating every single year. And people are still debating if this is something they should even really take seriously. I literally will still hear from people. I think I heard it 3 times this week. Do you really think AI is going to be a thing? You've seen the hype cycle, right? Do you really think it's going to be a thing? And I'm just, even if nothing couldn't, you are more than enough here to make it a thing. So I think it's not just about keeping up. It's not about knowing every new thing. It's acknowledging every single year we are going to start seeing massive updates. Forget every single year, every single month. Being able to adapt and plan is going to become so important. But Stefan, I wanted to ask you, if AI is evolving like this and he's, hey, we're going to have this massive announcement every single year, what does that mean for people who are long-term planning? If you're thinking about people in schools like K-12, you're thinking about people in elementary, how do people make decisions when the technology is going to change before it can even be implemented?
Started with the quote from my student, but right after that, we started talking about AGI and how it's going to come soon, and right. And then I pointed out, even if it doesn't all come soon, right, there's going to be some elements that come soon and things that are already here. I posted that in my blog today, and just as I was writing it, Ethan Mullock also posted. We already have so much. It would take us 10 years to integrate into society what we already have, right? Which is true. People are just picking this up. But look, the reality is you say, okay, we're in the spring of 2025. So maybe some schools start planning for next year and they do a little PG, which could really maybe mean teachers could in 2026, 2027 start to do stuff, especially 2027. You have a lot more people saying maybe AGI, right? 28. So what I would start doing is preparing. I would assume that the machines are going to be as smart as we are, at least close enough that we're splitting hairs at some point, because it's really just going to matter what they can do, and they can already do a lot. And start thinking about how to prepare students for this world. How might we restructure education for this world to begin to change those conversations, right? And I think that's one thing that people actually missed in that Kevin Roose article a little bit, because a lot of people would say, oh, yeah, he's right, it's coming. Other people, Gary Marks would be like, it's coming that fast. I'm tired of hearing this. But his major message wasn't so much, it's definitely going to be here in 2025 or 2026, but we need to start preparing for it. Right. And that's true whether it's coming in 25, 26, 27, or even 28. As I was just saying, there basically been no preparation. So I think we need to start thinking about how we want to prepare kids for this. I have a couple things to think about. One is debate, but also I've been toying with that idea a little bit more, that kids should learn how to start their own businesses in high school, and that should get some support for that. And then even think about how what they're learning in their classes applies to that. That brings it to the real world. That was the one thing my debater said. Oh, we debate about the real world. Actually, I had 3 or 4 different students say that in the feedback, that they learn about the real world, which just to me was, wow, that's a huge disconnect with school. They're saying learn about the real world of school and understand the relevance. So they would see that. So those are a couple ideas I have. You have the design thinking and teammates. There are ideas out there. Tim Dacey talking about wisdom. I think some people have stuff to say, but people aren't listening. Government obviously is going really fast at the moment. There's multiple things going on, right? It's not just about replacing people with AI. Well, we don't want the USAID anymore. We don't want the US Institute of Peace. They want to get rid of some of these things. There's that, right? There's these odd, we'll just call them political things for now. But one of the things they're doing is replacing people with AI, right? Because some of these jobs can be done with AI. And look, I think society is about to get dodged. They just don't realize it yet. I saw something, I never had a chance to see if it was true, but it said Amazon's going to lay off 14,000 mid-level managers. Well, why? Because those things maybe not necessary / can be replaced with AI, and then they'll just pay the people more underneath them to do their work. So there's all kinds of changes that they now added Waymos in like Miami or Austin. Like it is growing around. So that's doging the Uber drivers, right? So society is about to get doged. They need to pay attention a little bit. And I think the other thing, and you talk about this more later, is that I think more people need to talk more, and this is now it's so politicized, it's controversial, but really talk about human values in human situations, because for a good period of time, unless AI takes over, which case, all right, nothing we're doing really matters anyhow. But as long as the humans do remain in charge, and there's a good chance of that happening, how we use this technology and how we relate to this technology, it should come back to human values. And human values are complex. People disagree about their values or can be situational. But to really think about how you're going to use those technology, because a lot of times I think we don't have time for values. We're just trying to get the tasks done. Yeah, I could write a research paper, in 30 minutes if I wanted to, and it'd be pretty good. So I can get the task done. So the question is, why am I doing the task? What's the purpose? How is this going to impact me? How is this going to impact people close to me? How is it going to impact the world around me? Those are things to think about, because the technology is not only just widespread. I mean, it's cheap. Nuclear weapons are very powerful, but hardly anybody could have one, unfortunately. And anybody can really have a really powerful AI. So think about that, emotional, social relations. But I think we need to start changing our thinking. And like you brought up the hype second. We're so past the hype. The only thing I really honestly see being hyped sometimes is the time frame. But not that much. The people of this thing up there, it was like Jeff Hinton or the Elon Musk said, oh, we're going to have driverless cars in 2016 or something. And that didn't happen. Okay, but we have driverless cars now. What exactly is the relevance of the criticism? And to go back to what I think was Kevin Roos's main point, we need to start preparing for this. I don't think that it's ultimately time for that. I don't really understand, though. Do you think this is really going to be a thing? It is a thing. If you use it, and there was another survey too, which we could also link in the show notes. It said that 5% of Americans use AI all day. Another 7% use it 3 times a day. So to me, that's a thing.
All right, so the next big theme in his talk was that AI isn't just answering questions, it is reasoning through complex problems. He says how for decades AI was a tool, it processed data, retrieved answers, it helped automate tasks, but he made it clear that this era is over. He says we now have AIs that can reason, breaking a problem down step by step. Maybe it approaches a problem, he says, in a few different ways and selects the best answer. Maybe it solves the same problem in a variety of ways and ensures it has the same answer, which he called consistency checking. It's not just answering questions, it's thinking through problems, testing different approaches, and refining its own solutions, which is why I go back to that was my AGI moment when he said that. It is absolutely unbelievable that this is what we have been able to do faster for machines than we have for people. And I got to tell him, I just loved the example that he gave when he was talking about this. Was he chose planning a seating chart for a wedding. And I was like, you know what? Any single person on this planet is going to be able to relate to and understand, and it's side by side. And like I said, we'll link the video here for you. But it's these two these AI side by side. One is a regular LLM and one is the reasoning model. And he shows you from a token perspective and all the things, the differentiation between how the two are thinking through. And this is something that I see in education a lot. People will still say it just recognizes patterns. It's just repeating the next word. It's not doing anything. And I think that is something that has been ingrained in people's heads so much that now it's going to be very hard for them to learn past that unless they are really explicitly being taught that. So I just thought it was a really good example, but this is the second time this has happened. The first time it was OpenAI launched Operator, and Desert Sands, who is one of our partners, Desert Sands Unified School District, was hosting Student Agency Day. And I just thought it was so beautiful that on a day where they're announcing agency in AI, here you are doing this amazing event for students around agency. So for Desert Sands, human agency is just embedded in who they are way pre-AI. Their vision is the future is here and your future is here. And I think that's so beautiful. And today, as Jensen Huang tells everybody, hey, AI agents are here. This is the agency we're building in machines. They are sharing their AI guidance and launching it officially. Today is their official launch of their AI guidance to their board, literally happening as we speak and record this podcast. So it's like so many serendipitous, beautiful moments that are converging. And there are two things that I think make Desert Sands' AI guidance very unique. And that is number one, they have a decision-making framework designed to really empower human agency.
Yeah.
And the second really big piece of it, and these two really go hand in hand, is it's, I want to say, the only guidance that talks about AGI. And if somebody else has another one, please do share them with us so that we can curate and share these with people as well. But there's talks about AGI, and that credit really goes to you, Stefan. And I remember the conversation with Tiffany. Should we include this? This was a couple months ago when we were having the conversation, and she was like, yes, absolutely. And I think every single decision that they've been able to make is a testament to their culture and the agency that has really been embedded within the culture that they have. But talk to us a little bit about the guidance, about AGI, and then I'll share a little bit about the decision-making framework.
Yeah, obviously working with them on the guidance was really awesome because they really recognized the importance of it. When we started, you never know where you're going to end up, but they recognized the importance of AI and developing an appropriate guidance. So that was one thing. The second thing is there was a lot of back and forth because there are a lot of different interests. Administrators have certain needs they need to fulfill, the teachers. We have things that we strongly believe. And I think everyone came together. And I don't always like the, well, meet in the middle because the middle's not always right. The middle to me is another option. And I wasn't really saying so much that we met in the middle, but after vetting all the ideas, debating them out a little bit in a very friendly way, of course, we included all the best ideas in the document. You know, in addition to your WISE framework, the examples, which I think you'll talk about, were really useful. But their approach to AGI at the end there, I think is really valuable. What they explain what AGI is, and we've talked about that enough times, I won't re-explain it again. They have their AI Futures Committee, right? To start thinking about that. Was saying, and I referenced a couple of times earlier in the podcast, we need to start thinking about these things. And they're not technological questions in my mind. They're instructional questions. They're questions about humans and human identity, other than understanding that we're going to have human level AI. That's all you really even need to know. You can just start there, be like, okay, spot you, we're going to have human level AI, and then we can have the discussion, right? And I think they could really emerge as a leader because there's really a dearth of conversation. And it's not at the K-12 level. It's also at the university level. I think I mentioned one of the other podcasts, Matt Stedmark at MIT. But he's like, I don't even think MIT really fully understands what's going on, right? These changes, they're going to come fast and come large, and they're going to be shocking to people. But I think that people understand and have started the conversations. They not only have kind of the best hope of adapting, but they can really lead other people. I can really see a world where a year from now, people are going to Desert Sands and saying, gee, what do we do? Somebody might ask me, oh, we have a debate team. How do you structure those types of things? We're like, oh, all right. So AGI is here. We see guys implementing some programs. So I think people will be reaching out to Desert Sands and related people. And it's well explained in the document as well. So I encourage you to look at it. But yeah, I think it's the first guidance that I've seen that really explicitly addresses it, maybe at least beyond a reference, which I don't even know that I've seen.
Absolutely. And so because of that hand in hand, one of the things, just because we have to talk about not just this episode, but so many of the episodes we've done where we have talked about how they are building agency in machines, really doubling down on human agency and having frameworks and communication strategies and actual methods for how you are going to do that becomes really, really important. And so one of the things they've done is when we know there are many points of tension, one of the biggest ones being obviously around students and their use of AI. But one of the things that they did, and they integrated it with their learner profile, was they created a framework called RISE. And RISE stands for respect, integrity, support, and empathy. And they are a series of questions that are applied to scenarios that people can practice, that people can create. But these are questions that are really designed to be a communication tool between people if something goes wrong, if something exciting, or you have an idea. How did you come to this? How did you leverage AI? If there is a challenge or concern that comes up, these are the questions we use to have the conversation. But these four questions, they look different for every stakeholder. And that's another thing I really like about the framework is it's not just one for teaching and learning. It's not just for students because we're trying to mitigate for cheating. It's no, we are empowering every single person in our community with a set of questions and communication strategies, frameworks, and examples for how we will talk about our use of AI to lead with ethics, with integrity, and really equity as well for all people. And so it's really, really incredible. But I think time and time again, we go back to how that scenario-based approach, it really works in helping people. I see all the gray areas, see all the nuances and all of those pieces. And it brings me to the next theme. So we'll link it. I know they're going to be sharing like a toolkit and some other pieces. And so if that's available, we will share that there. But if you have any questions about the framework or about the Desert Sands guidance in general, or you are looking to create your own, definitely reach out and let us know. So now let's move to the next big theme in his keynote. And that is really this takeaway that the skills that matter the most in AI are not the ones we've prioritized in education. They are all now being automated away. And that's not to say they're not important, but it does mean we need to consider other layers and complements to those skills. He made it really, really clear the game has changed. And the example he gives is software engineers. 100% of software engineers, he says, will be AI assisted. And this is something Dario Amodei said as well, CEO of Anthropic. He goes in 3 to 6 months. I think it said something like, what was it? What did he say? Did he say 60% of the code, 70%? I don't remember. But basically, he said it in
I think
12.
said maybe 100% or like 99-ish%, right? 98
Okay.
within a year, right? I
Yeah.
think
So
that.
basically, the idea was that within a year, same thing that Jensen Huang is saying, 100% of software engineers are going to be AI assisted. And I can't remember if we shared it on the last episode, but I always go back to that quote from Apple about how everyone should learn the language of code because it is the language of technology. But the more people that learn it, the more people that can change the world. And that's what he said as well. Now, every single person can change the world because you just have more ability to create. You have more ability and access to things. And so a lot of people like, oh, should I learn to code? Should I not learn to? Yes, learn, but just know that it has never just really been about beginning and ending with just that there. But again, it goes back to that's why I loved that debate quote, like set the tone for today, because the skills that matter are not just technical. And this goes for any field and for any profession. Yes, technical skills are going to matter to some degree, of course, always, like every skill will. But right now, the really important ones to complement those skills are going to be judgment, knowing what's even worth solving, prioritizing, where should we spend our time, creativity, not just about getting answers or creating something, but are you asking the right questions like about things, and ethics and decision making, which is understanding impact, not just execution. But one thing that we definitely can agree on, I think, is that if you just keep prioritizing like memorization, repetition, blue books, only pen and paper, you are literally making people obsolete. And I think that that's just a really tragic kind of place to be.
One thing you think about is, okay, what's the role of the CEO, right? To come up with the ideas, to assign the tasks, to make sure it gets done, make sure people interact with each other, work together on the projects, right? I think everybody's going to become like that. Be the CEO of both the AIs and the CEO of the, there's still going to be humans working and human to human interaction using their AIs. And what I call AI human, just because I don't think you necessarily have to, over the long term, prioritize the one will have more power. I think you can say there's a debate about, okay, on the values question, should we leave that to the humans? But they'll be similar intellectually, or the AIs, like as we said, may very well exceed the human capacity. So I don't like to say what the relationship amongst all of them are, but it's really powerful stuff that you can use. Imagine that you're one of Bill Gates's kids, right? And he's like, okay, I'll give you $1 billion. I'll hire Jeff Bezos, the person who ran the CFO of Microsoft. Like, I'll give you like 100 free employees that are the leaders of their field, right? You can even have Jensen. And then you can use that to build your own business. Wow. All right. You think, okay, I could be a trillionaire, right? Not just get $1 billion inheritance. I would still have to know how to work with those people to succeed. But that's my point, right? That we're going to have to learn how to manage and work together. We're both doing that already. It's just a smaller level, right? You're managing your AI that does your marketing. You're managing the AI that helps edit the video, right? And then you have a human that helps too, right? I do more writing, so you manage the AIs that do the writing and the research. It's all there, even at a smaller level. So I think, again, that's where the focus needs to be. And that isn't to say students don't need any content knowledge. You need to understand how the economy works and interpersonal communication. There's a lot of content skills, a lot of content knowledge, and even some traditional skills that you need. But I think to your point, it's where's the emphasis? The emphasis is normally then on making kids stochastic parrots, where they just learn all this content and they spit it back out on the test. And we assume, oddly, no one has, I don't even think done research. I bet some research has been done on this. That we assume that once they spit that back out on the test, that they retain it, which, come on, we all live, right? Even things you learn, you don't retain it all. There's all kind of questions now being introduced in education. Are the kids more like stochastic parrots, like the machine? Or are they retaining their knowledge? What are the better ways to learn? Everything's kind of been thrown up there for debate, but I think things are going to change a lot, and that's where we're headed with this.
I agree. And as always, if you would like support in your initiative as you are thinking about what role does AI play in our organization? How do we start thinking about agency for machines, for humans? What does it look like when you build an AI team and work together? What does guidance look like? What does curriculum instruction look like? What does anything look like? We want to always invite you to join the AI Power Circle. It is our team-based cohort experience where for anywhere between 3 to 9 months, we work with your team, and we really help you identify and design your AI integration strategy in alignment with your vision, your values, and your strategic priorities. And I think that's one of probably what I think I enjoy most about this experience is where it's not about the tool, right? It's not about, oh, here's all the tools, here's what you can use, here's what you can do. It's really, what is your vision? What are your values? What are the things you would like to accomplish? What are those strategic priorities on your list? And how can we leverage AI as a member of your team to be able to help you accelerate those? So as always, we will leave a link to that in the show notes, along with all the other resources that we shared today. We definitely encourage you to listen in to this incredible keynote with Jensen Huang. Check out some of the articles, and we will see you next week.
It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Designing Schools community. Leaving a review for the podcast helps others learn about the show, giving them the gift of knowledge and allowing this community to help create access and exposure to ideas and opportunities others may not even know exist.